Welcome to Things You Don't Know, the podcast that takes you to different places, uncovers little-known facts about well-known people, and uncovers little-known people and the things that they have done. Today, we have an exciting guest to help us with this. What is it we're going to look at? Starting off with the Salem witch trials, which everyone knows a lot about. But we've got more. We're going to look at that, but we're going to look at Wicca, witchcraft. Dr. Deneen, let's get our wonderful guest introduced. Please, sir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Weaver. I'm very pleased to introduce to you my friends, Miss Lisa Marie Eisenhower, a solo pagan practitioner since 1995, a certified neuromassage expert, a member of the Interfaith Church, and a conductor of pagan rituals between 2011 and 2014, and one of the finest people I've ever had the opportunity to know.
Hear, hear, hear. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. Blessed be.
Okay, so as I said, we're going to start off by a brief look at the Salem witch trials. Mm-hmm. The Salem witch trials were instigated based on several factors, some of which remain today. One mm-hmm. factor was clearly the mythology surrounding the religion, which was actually recognized finally in 1986. Another factor was the restricted life assigned to young women in the Puritan society, mm-hmm. Because claiming that they had been bewitched gave them a great deal of attention and was exciting to them. And to others, too.
There was a witchcraft hysteria in the 17th century, not just the American colonies at the time, but in Europe also. And in addition to the restrictive lives of the young women that were driven by their patriarchal culture, there's some theories out there based on weather patterns and crop consumption at the time that some of the visions and things that were reported were actually prompted by ergotism being spread among the populace by infected grain.
Exactly, yes. And that causes delusions, hallucinations, and some very strange mm-hmm. behavior. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, is that money mm-hmm. and finances also came into play. Sean has something to say about that.
Yes, remember that Massachusetts Bay is a Puritan Calvinist settlement, and one of the main doctrines of Calvinism is predestination. Mm-hmm. So how does one know if one is in the elect? Well, there's a sort of a superstition that wealth is a sign of divine favor, mm-hmm. because why would the Almighty allow people to get rich if they're going to burn anyway? Mm-hmm. So there isn't much social mobility in a society like that.
Okay, I want to move this along so that we don't spend all of our time on the Salem witchcraft trials. But, mm-hmm. One of the factors was they had a new minister, Reverend Paris, and he made some pretty powerful enemies among the wealthier families in the community. His daughter, Paris's daughter, was one of the first to state that she had been afflicted with bewitchment. Those accused could lose their property and which could be bought for pennies. And there were other factors, but those are the ones that I think had the most effect. Let's explore the theology of Wicca.
Mm-hmm. If we're talking about Wicca itself, it varies widely depending on the proclivities of the practitioners. Wicca, if we're talking what was originated by Gerald Gardner, and Gardnerian witchcraft, or Wicca, based on his research in the latter part of the 19th and early 20th century, is a polytheistic religion, essentially earth-based and goddess-centered, with the central deity being a female figure, if you will, with the god usually existing as her consort. There are a lot of people who describe themselves as Wiccans or pagans who don't necessarily follow his tenets of belief. The chief one among those being what's called the Wiccan Rede, or the Rule of Three, in that their main construct is, "And it harm none, do as thou wilt," on the understanding that anything you send out into the universe in thought, word, or deed comes back to you threefold. It's elegant and Newtonian and very simple to wrap your head around. There aren't a lot of rules except don't hurt anybody, be nice to people, or else bad things will happen to you and you're just going to have to accept the consequences.
Sounds like karma.
More or less. And there are a lot of modern pagans do invoke the idea of karma. That you'll see a fair amount of cherry picking among pagan practitioners because there isn't really a sacred text that they refer to as such. There isn't always a religious central hierarchy to turn to for education. Among covens that I've encountered over the years, even though I'm not a member of one, I've known people who've been part of covens, and they tend to keep a grimoire or book of lore, knowledge, or spells that they teach to their adepts and people who wish to join, and kind of graft their beliefs and the things that are priorities for them onto central ideas of harming none and spreading goodwill. Most of the time, we talked a little bit previously about how there really is no good or evil in the craft, whether you are following the left-hand path, meaning the dark path, or the right-hand path, meaning path of light. Those things exist only in the heart of the witch, the free will to choose either good or evil, or somewhere in between.
I would imagine, if I may, there's also a certain, for some practitioners, a Celtic or Scandinavian element. I have a friend who follows the Norse traditions. He's a follower of Odin and Freya. I didn't know how prevalent that was.
For it, most of the people that I encounter, and it's interesting if you're coming up against people like me at a gathering who are your basic white person that's just come out of mostly Germanic and Irish roots. You'll tend to find people identifying more with Celtic pantheon or the Norse pantheon and things of that nature. And the thing that I guess has left me a little empty with that, and I tend to try to think of myself as more eclectic, is that's not really inclusive of the magic and folklore of people of color. And there's an extremely rich reservoir of lore and interest and marvelously intricate, delicate, beautiful spell work in the Yoruban and Vodun religions that originated in the Caribbean and in parts of the Americas where people of color were practicing a faiths that were an amalgam of Christian beliefs from colonizers with local folkloric religions.
I know a little bit about Odin, about Zulu and Matabele African tradition. There's a strong eclectic element in that as well.
Mm-hmm. And, I've over the years have found myself in my journey identifying more as an eclectic witch because I'm curious about all of it. I want to know all of it. I feel a special personal connection to the Norse pantheon because of my ancestry. I have a lot of Celtic and Scandinavian ancestry, and my studies in the SCA, as I'm thinking of joining that, have caused me to be more passionate about learning about those roots and the healing practices of those cultures. But there's room in my heart in my mind for everyone, and I want to learn as much as I possibly can and have as inclusive a worldview as I can.
I would really like to explode some of the mythology around witchcraft.
Happily.
Okay, so are you a Satanist?
Not remotely. For that to happen, I would have to believe that Satan exists, and I don't.
Okay. How about...
There is no devil in the craft. The choice to do good or evil is not outside of the self. It resides within the heart of the self, and one is responsible for one's own choices. There is not some outer being that dictates the scales of one's destiny toward good or evil.
Right.
So yeah. There was no external devil in the craft. There's a little devil in all of us.
Okay.
The devil as a being in my spiritual purview does not exist.
Okay. So one of the other things that's a myth, of course, the famous riding of the broom.
Oh yeah. It's interesting because if you look at the folklore of brooms as they're used in witchcraft, and Scott Cunningham's books speak beautifully to this. He unfortunately died very young of AIDS, but one of my favorite Wiccan authors, and his books are very, very accessible and succinct, beautiful explanations of things. But the brooms the riding of the brooms is a fantasy, a fantasy prompted by perhaps masturbatory behavior that people would love to witness women engaging in with something phallic. If you think about the lovely plump thighs around a broomstick, I mean, it's wholly impractical. I will say, however, that there are some witches who use various medicaments or herbs that induce a transcendental state that makes them feel like they're flying. In fact, if you look at Erica Jong's book, Witches, which is just back in print again, there's a recipe in there for flying ointment. I don't recommend using it because some of the ingredients are poisonous, but the hallucinogenic effects of them are definitely attributed in folklore, and they do exist. But no, the broomstick and the women riding on it at night is a phallic fantasy. The broom, however, as a ritual instrument, is used for clearing space and invoking the element of earth because of its contact with dirt. So it brings together the element of earth and air. And in some rituals, and you'll see people jump over a broom when they're married. It's a representative of crossing that line into a new world.
That's very important too. So, do you sit around a big cauldron and double boil and several, and all this kind of mess?
No, but I will confess to you that I have had a chance to perform that scene from Macbeth and at the Holland Civic Theater, and it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I don't do that. I do have a very small iron pot that I keep with my ritual implements on my altar that's used just for magical purposes, generally, burning candles and incense on lesser esbats and sabbats when, the moon is full or on the solstice and things like that. Now, I don't brew potions and things like that in a cauldron.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Also, you mentioned candles. I know that your background, you were practicing Catholic.
I used to be a long time ago. I'm a recovering Catholic now.
Okay, and they use candles. Is that a similar thing in witchcraft?
No, it is because fire is an element of change. It's an element of cleansing. And when you do pyromancy, candle magic or magic with fire, whether you're looking into the flames of a fire and trying to gain wisdom from it, what we would call scrying the flames, or lighting a candle in a ritual, you're inviting the element of fire to change the energies around you. And it becomes a focal point for concentration. So candles are very important in a lot of faiths.
I agree with you that's the case. You've mentioned magic several different times.
Yes.
Can you say something about what that means? What is magic?
It's magic to me personally. And even though I've been studying witchcraft since 1995, I'm still learning every day. But magic to me personally is a feeling of connection to the earth and the elements around it and the beings therein, and that's profound and really beautiful. I see magic in the eyes of people that I cross paths with and say hello to on the bus. I see it in children that I pass in the street. I see it in snowflakes that are falling. It's everywhere if you pay attention.
So it's not prestidigitation.
No.
It's
no.
not...
Magic has nothing to do with my will or creating falsehood or anything like that. In fact, on the occasions when I've done ritual spell work with other people who were Wiccans or not, say for instance, I've done protection magic and banishing for people. The magic really is the gathering of all these people together with a common purpose. The magic is the hope for something better than what they walked through my door with. The magic to me is hope. It doesn't necessarily mean that my will is going to change the situation. It's my hope that what we're trying to create together will affect some sort of positive change in the life of the person who is seeking my help. But,
okay, see, that is very, very, very different than the popularized version.
Right. The image of magic practitioners in popular culture tends to be a construct that I would see as being very ego-based. One of the few things that I've seen that came even close to getting it right, and it's only happened a couple of times. If you watch the series Charmed from the late 90s, there are three sisters who discover a book of witchcraft in their attic that belonged to their granny that they're trying to learn from. And they constantly remind each other that they're not supposed to use their magic for personal gain. And that's something that I think that it comes very close to the meaning of what it is for me. I have this gift, if you will, of connection to the earth and some kind of insight and a very heightened intuition when it comes to trying to reach out to other people. And I'm grateful for that. I'm aware of that gift and my responsibility to not use it for my personal gain, to try and find some way to be humble about its presence in my life and show my gratitude by using it for the service of others.
So
just the way that a Christian woman would.
Two things about that. One, I wanted to ask, are you anti-science?
No, love science. In fact, I just designed, this is brilliant. I just designed T-shirts for my children and me that I'm very excited about getting, and mine says Science Loving Witch on it. And I have two young sons who are brilliant, and their shirts say Science Loving Son of a Witch on it. Yeah. Science is a huge component of my faith. Science is a huge component of the magic that I see around me. There is no difference to me in my mind and heart between magic and science. Magic is just science we haven't explained yet. I mean, if you think about the complexity and the beauty of the organelles of a human cell and the tiny, tiny little particles in that do all these marvelous functions, and the fact that, your body, Bill, the somatic cells in your body renew themselves for more or less every 120 days. So 3 times a year, if you were my client for massage or spell work, I would be working with a brand new Bill 3 times a year. And it would be astonishing. That to me is magical because it's a part of nature that's utterly beautiful.
And scientific.
And scientific. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you'd be amazed how many witches I know that are scientists who love science.
Actually, I would not be surprised about that. But one of the things that I may be able to surprise you with is a study that was done. In fact, there's been a series of studies that's sort of unexplainable at this point in our lack of information, that people who are prayed for have much better results, even if they don't know that they've been prayed for, than those who have not been prayed for.
I believe that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that relates to some of you mentioned spells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me they're closely associated with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we look at the law of thermodynamics about energy and its constant movement through various phases. And the nearest thing I can liken this to is massage, because my vocation as a massage therapist is very closely connected to my faith as an eclectic pagan. When I put my hands on a client, I am administering mechanical energy through the strokes of my hands. The heat from my body is transmitted into that person's body. So that's thermal energy. And then you have, beyond that, the energy, the electrochemical processes of my nervous system that are transmitting chemical energy or electrical energy, if you will, into this person. And, that intention drives a lot of that. And we can't necessarily say that the intention of thought, caring and kind thought is limited in its capacity to access a person and help them in some small way. I work with strangers every single day when I'm at the office and place my hands on them and try to be present for them and do the best I can to facilitate a healing experience for them. And I by the same token, I don't create the healing experience. I'm there simply to facilitate. It's no different than praying for someone.
Unfortunately, we are kind of running tight on time here. I just want to, first of all, say thank you, Lisa. Your information and your presence, I really appreciate you're taking the time to talk with us about this. And I hope that our listeners feel like they have learned something. Sean, if you want to say anything?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with what both of you have said. I know in my own experience, if I may say so, Lisa, you radiate a healing, nurturing, redemptive presence without being fully aware of it sometimes. I've seen you do that when you're acting and just your personal interaction with people, and it's been a joy to watch.
Thank you. Same to you.
Well, this has been a joy for me, and it truly has. And to our listeners, I would say, I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something. If you have, we would really appreciate you giving us a thumbs up, a like, and please feel free to leave comments. We would love to hear from you. And we hope that you'll join us for future episodes.